Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, as the latest inflation figures are released, I'd like to discuss how the economy is looking much more optimistic than the Tory media would like you to think, but also explain exactly how the Labour government are changing the UK's approach to growing the economy, given that they don't seem interested in shouting about it themselves. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So all of this actually is a really big topic, as you can imagine. I'm trying to make it as concise as possible to give you a taste of all the individual things that Labour are doing differently with the economy and how it will lead to real changes that benefit ordinary people, not just the already wealthy. So the latest inflation figures are out today, 2.5%. Now, that is of course above the general target of 2%, but it is still good news for Rachel Reeves, following reasons. First, it's exactly what the Bank of England forecast last year, which was when the Conservatives were in power, of course. Second, it is actually lower than a recent forecast. So the recent forecast went up a little bit. I now think it'll be 2.6%, it was 2.5%. So it's technically better than expected by some economists. Third, because inflation is broadly in line with the Bank of England's expectations, and it's certainly no worse, then interest rates are likely to proceed, interest rate cuts that is, likely to proceed according to their expectations as well. That could well mean an interest rate cut next month. Now that's not certain or necessarily even likely, but it is now possible, and that would be hugely helpful to Labour. I mean, it would have very practical benefits as well, but even just for the messaging, the Tories will struggle to say that Labour are digging the economy into a hole if interest rates have just been cut. As far as the general public are concerned, there are only really two measures of economic progress as far as I can tell. Lower interest rates and lower inflation rates, because those are the two things that govern how expensive things are for them. So if both look like they're going in the right direction, then much of the public will be fairly satisfied. It's also worth pointing out, as the Tories and their client media try to say Reeves is under this massive pressure and has made a mess of things, Ken Clarke has come out and said it's ridiculous to blame a Labour government that's been in place for like 6 months for where the economy is now. And he's actually praised Rachel Reeves, in fact. And you think, well, who is Ken Clarke? Well, he's a former Conservative Chancellor. But more than that, he is the last Conservative Chancellor who actually grew the economy. It was a very long time ago now. But remember what happened after 2010? Tories came to power. Were they hailing an economic miracle after 6 months in power? No. Were they taking ownership over the state of the economy after 6 months in power? No. Even after 5 years and going into another election, they were still making excuses, still blaming the previous government. Now, Labour will be able to demonstrate progress come the next general election. And how can I be so confident? Well, it's true there are banana skins along the way. The second Trump presidency is a big one. But I've already come to terms with the fact that this decade, the 2020s, is just cursed, right? So if Trump doesn't get us, the invasion of the space monkeys will. It'll be something, right? But Labour are approaching the economy in a fundamentally different way to the Tories and actually the last Labour government. People focus on the budget which Reeves announced in terms of like purely tax and spend. You know, where was the money moved around? Did spending overall increase or decrease? Well, overall spending has increased quite a lot. Even if Reeves does scale back on some of her spending plans, which I very much hope she does not, it's still increased spending. But it's where that spending is being prioritised which is important for the next few years. So the NHS, clean energy, transport, housing, these are all major investments from the government, and they are all cornerstones of any thriving economy. Like, you need decent housing in order to be able to attract the workers to where the work is. You need good railways in order to let workers fish further home from jobs. If they can, you know, if your range for how far you can travel reasonably for work is like 10 miles, okay. If it's 20 miles, that's a load more areas where you can potentially work. And that's to the benefit of those businesses who want to attract the best workers as well. You know, you need decent healthcare in order to get workers back up to full productivity quickly when they become ill or injured. We need a massive expansion of particularly clean energy in order to power future technologies, like an expansion of the use of electric cars and all those AI data centers. They're going to be sucking the juice. You can argue education as well. But that, of course, is a longer term investment, which Labour are also making. But the other four can get you results before the next election if you power them up. And these are exactly the areas which the country needs to invest in the most. And they are also the areas that Reeves has focused on. Sure, it would be better if those investments could be higher. It would certainly have been better if some of the less popular policies had not been made to give the Tory media an easy time. But the fact that the budget has put the greatest emphasis on where it's most needed, like for growth, that is going to have an impact. As economists frequently point out, the UK has actually struggled with investment for quite a long time. If you look in detail, it's true that if you look at overall investment, it looks like it's been quite high at times, but when you break it down, it's mostly in the financial sector, which is a huge part of our economy. But strip it out, and investment in other sectors has looked poor, which is why one of the reasons why we see this huge disparity between how well the London economy is doing and the rest of the country, because the financial sector is mostly concentrated into London. You know, you compare to similar economies, take financial services out, our overall investment's quite poor. And it's been like that for a lot of years, predating even, frankly, the worst of all Conservative governments that we've just had. And it would be tempting for Labour to just lean into what's already doing well, help it along, hope that enough growth emerges there to invest elsewhere later on, right? But as the economic forecasts are demonstrating, there is nothing but anemic growth coming our way for years to come. So if Labour want to tell a happier story at the next election, if they want to be able to say, here's the growth we delivered that we promised, not just, well, we halted the decline, they need to do something extra. They need to do something new. And they know that, and they are doing. So what have Labour done to massively shake things up? Well, the Employment Rights Bill is a big one. The way you'd present it to much of the public, the way many of you may see it, is it's an improvement in your rights as an employee, but it's also an economy booster. Fiddles by some businesses which result in poor job and pay security, like claiming that employees are actually really self-employed or 0 hours contracts. They're a huge block on economic growth. There are other factors to consider as well, because to people who are used to a diet of right-wing economic theory, which is all you really get in the media, the idea of increasing the cost of hiring workers sounds mad. Well, that's just going to be a block on the economy, is it? Why would you make businesses pay more for workers? But consider the following. I mean, first of all, you could consider the fact that the last Labour government did that and actually the economy boomed, right? But first, like, if you pay workers more, they spend it. That supports existing and allows the development of new businesses which power our economy. Let more of that money end up as profit, and even if it stays in the country, and a lot of it does not, very little of it finds its way back into our economy. So the more money you can push down, the more it'll keep cycling around the economy. The more that gets driven up, the less does that. Second, although this can lead to an increase in unemployment as businesses adjust, and we're seeing a few signs of that now, and the Tories will of course crow, consider that we have an economy where we have more vacancies than available workers. The fact that we can't fill those vacancies means we've already got a block on our productivity, and we've got a public that wants immigration to be lower. And of course, the only reasonable way to fill those vacancies is actually more immigration. So how do you square those circles? Well, you need fewer jobs. I mean, if you want to manage with less immigration, and if you've already got an economy that's got too many vacancies, you need fewer jobs in that economy, don't you? But you don't want that to come at a cost of productivity. You still want productivity to be high. In other words, you need workers to be more productive individually, but we don't want them working 3 jobs and acting like slaves. So this is where new technology like AI comes into the mix. There are pros and cons to this approach, but that is where it's going to come into it. But because Labour are also increasing pay, as well as the rights and protections, and also the way unions can operate, that puts workers in a better place to keep demanding better pay. So businesses cannot just pocket all the profits by replacing some manual work with technology. It acts against the standard encouraging of money to be driven upwards, where, as I say, it's largely hoarded or shifted offshore, rather than downwards and outwards, where it keeps the economic engine fueled up. The war against NIMBYism, that is also another potential game changer. Yes, we need to keep an eye on just which regulations are changed and whether or not it's in our long-term interest, and I'm quite sure we're not going to agree with all of them. But stopping people from blocking even the investment that the worst Tory government in history could attract, that just slows everything down. It's all very well having money available for housing if people keep saying, no, you can't build the houses there. Well, what about that? No. Same with anything, really. You know, a lot of the investment money that the Tories were able to announce in government, oh, there's this much investment, this much investment, this much investment. Quite a lot of it was ultimately wasted. That is, the money was there, and some of it was even spent, but we got nothing out of it. Like it didn't boost the economy. Like HS2 and Dido Harding's Track and Trace were the worst examples, but there were others as well. You know, the fact that much of the new investment coming is from public funds, that is also very different to what's come before. The Conservatives would work on the principle of trying to maximise investment from the private sector, meaning that any public money that they had to cough up was a last resort and, as a result, half-arsed and not necessarily directed in the way you would want it to be. But although Labour are also, of course, having to attract plenty of private investment as well, there's lots which the public will own. You know, we've got rail company nationalisation now in full swing, GB Energy, the National Wealth Fund. These are all examples of where the public will be investing billions in vital infrastructure, and it's the public who will own it, and so the public who will get the returns on that. This has not happened in decades. This approach has not happened in decades. In fact, you could draw a parallel here between what Reeves is doing with the economy right now and what Starmer did with the Labour Party when he became leader. Lots of big changes under the bonnet, you know, fixing the basic infrastructure, which you wouldn't have noticed unless you were paying close attention. But a few years later, that more efficient engine's performance becomes more apparent. Labour are taking a fundamentally different approach to the economy than either the Conservatives or even New Labour. And because they recognise that the public will judge the economy on how well it serves them personally, you know, lower cost of living, better rates of pay, not just figures on a chart. You won't be able to just, oh, GDP looks good, doesn't it? They don't care. They're making sure that every move is designed to benefit key voters before the next election. And I'll tell you what, billionaires are not key voters. And if only they would at least attempt to convey this to the public, the Tory media might find itself with a tougher time pushing their own lines. But I may discuss that more in another video later. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.